Hello and welcome to CHGO Red Stars, presented by PointsBet. Use promo code CHGO when you sign up to get two risk-free bets up to $2,000. It's your girl Sandra, ready to talk about all things Chicago Red Stars because we don't have a win to talk about, but we got some things to chat about. So it's me, Sandra, here with my friend, homie, and colleague Claire Watkins, aka the scam originator. Can't wait to keep everybody on side, I guess, with the Chicago Red Stars. We got to talk about a loss. We got to talk about lack of movement. We got to talk about preview for next week's game. And we're going remote once more because belated birthday wishes, I think, are in order for you, buddy.
Yeah, I'm out
Happy
here.
B-Day.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been an interesting week, right? Just sort of in the whole landscape. I think we're seeing a flurry of activity in the league elsewhere due to the transfer window closing. We're seeing some teams maybe tip like the different ways they're trying to get better. We're seeing some teams being like, "Nope, we're good. We're locked in. We're happy with our group." And Chicago's in a weird situation, which is that I think they haven't changed what they've been doing. So it's not like there's been some sort of significant trade-off or change or slide or anything like that. But some of the things that were working for them in the first half of the season and this is what you get used to. Teams tactically get used to what you're doing, and it becomes harder to kind of run out with plan A. And so now I think, Sandra, you see if you agree with me. Now we're like, okay, it's not that plan A is bad, but also what is plan B here?
Yeah, no
You
kidding.
know?
What is the plan for the second half now that the thing that has always typically happened for many clubs in NWSL, not just the Red Stars, but the Red Stars in particular, are no strangers to navigating long seasons and then um, sort of having a number of players get hit with an injury bug or otherwise down the late stretch of the season. And I think maybe we're like reflecting on this, yes, because as you mentioned, this transfer window that's been open for a very long time is going to close very soon. Number one, but it's also something that we need to start talking about, not just because of the timeline, but it's also the timeline and the stretch that the Red Stars have had, right? Because they're sort of hitting an interesting point of the season, where they've lost their third match in 4 games coming off of this Angel City game, which we're going to run down for everybody right now. And then they're going to be going up against the North Carolina Courage side that are kind of playing a little fearlessly. Like they're absolutely a team that's at the bottom of the table and playing with nothing to lose, right? So it's they're going to be going up against teams with a very specific energies, I guess is what I'm alluding to. But maybe we start with the most recent game in front of us. So the Red Stars kick off a long 4-week stretch of having to be the visiting side. So they started with this first game on the road to California against Angel City. They dropped this one 1-0. And I gotta say, there were a lot of moments and stretches in this game where I was like, this kind of feels like San Diego all over again a little bit. There were moments of momentum in the game in which I thought like Chicago didn't necessarily perform poorly. And it just sort of felt like another one of those moments where it's like, gosh, it's like you're kind of doing enough here and doing everything but getting the goal. And something that we talked about in the preview leading up to this was the fact that they were going to be without somebody like Mel Pugh, and how that is going to where the attacking and where the goal scoring was going to come from, in light of losing your leading goal scorer. And it just didn't come for them in this game.
Yeah, I think the game was actually not dissimilar to the San Diego game in that I think if you watch the Red Stars weekly, you see them get put under a lot of pressure early. And in fact, you don't worry about that too much. I think, if you look at the stats, the final stats of the game, you look at the XG mapping, that sort of a thing. Yes. So they did get put under pressure early. Obviously, that big Savannah McCaskill chance that she did sink, I think, is the main driver of XG for both teams in the match. She was right in front of goal there. Really nice run from her. It's been cool to see her sort of develop into a box-to-box midfielder, as an aside. But so we saw Angel City get a good amount of pressure on Chicago early on without a ton of quality themselves in front of goal to show for it.
Yeah.
But also you get used to over time seeing that kind of pressure be sustained against the Red Stars, and you go, well, they're probably mostly going to be fine. Tatum Milazzo, I think, had another excellent game, looked very calm back there. Erin Wright, I thought how they used her was very interesting to have her stay home in the first half, push her up in the second half. So there were little things that, again, it felt very much like Chicago playing their game. However, in front of goal, it was pretty dire, as you can see. It looks like they got a couple chances right at the very end there. And it wasn't for lack of possession in the attacking third. It was just, I don't know if they were a little bit in their own heads about it. I don't know if it was just looking. I mean, I know that they also probably were a little in their own heads about the shots to shots on goal ratio that they had been struggling with, which usually means that you start to shoot less, which is not necessarily the best way to deal with that. So I think we saw sort of that progression of they were probably frustrated with how many blocked or errant shots they were getting off in the last 3 or 4 weeks. So they stopped shooting. And as we all know, you miss 100% of the shots
you don't take. Epic quote by Wayne Gretzky.
The ones that you're thinking about taking, but don't take. Yeah. I do actually think I literally said that while watching this game. I said that out loud.
Yes, I found myself at times tweeting through it a little bit, and I'm not someone, I think at this point in my life, who necessarily does that anymore. Maybe in a certain time in my life I was, but I was like, gosh, I gotta put it somewhere. So I put it on Twitter, and I believe that was my Twitter backseat coaching attempt. I was just like, if you have the ball at your feet in the box, I'm gonna need you to shoot it, perhaps. Yeah. So it definitely got to it definitely sort of felt like maybe it was a little bit of the mental side of things, perhaps, because it just sort of looked like maybe trying to take the extra pass inside the box versus, again, just shooting it. And difference for sure in terms of half to half. I don't know if I would say maybe that first half was mostly even between the two teams, more than just neither of them truly played themselves into the game. Until really that second half. And I think when we already showed everybody the map, but just alluding to it, again, looking at the timing of things, like having Angel City get this goal immediately out of the second half, or out of halftime, excuse me. It's like it puts things in motions a little bit differently. I think if you're coming out and saying, okay, like it's halftime, we're not down and out, it's still even. How are we going to push forward? And you're like, okay, here we go. We were going into the second half with our plan B, perhaps.
Right.
And then that immediately has to go to your plan C, D, E, whatever, because you're down so early in that second half.
Yeah.
Hey guys, tell me what's worst for you as a fan. Is it worse to have your team concede a goal right before halftime or right after? Because I mean, it's both bad.
I think after.
I'm going to say after.
Yeah.
Because it's like you've gone into half, you've got your plan, and then all of a sudden, boom,
right?
Change
then everything changes. Right.
Because I think you go into halftime maybe looking at any potential adjustments to make in general.
Right.
Whether you're down a goal or you're still level. So you're going into halftime, perhaps, if nothing else, maybe doing a mental, reset and saying like, okay, here's where we are, and here's where we're trying to go for the second half. And then to sort of just concede that early in the second half, you're just kind of like, well, never mind. We just went through a reset. Now we got to do it again.
And by nature, just with soccer, as we all know, like one of the blessings and cursings of the game is that you have limited coaching moments, right? You have limited feedback.
No timeout for soccer, baby.
Yeah, at least if you
so
go down
hot,
right
there's the
before
water
the half.
break. Don't forget the drinks break.
Yeah, I know. You can at least talk it through, but I think right after is a little bit worse.
Yeah. Also, like, and we're not only talking just right after, but we're also talking right after. And we got to talk about in the manner in which this goal actually happened for Angel City. It was not a goal that was one of these like clinical finish, like groundbreaking type of moments to where you can say, hey, I'm going to feel like demoralized by this goal. It was not that at all. It was just sort of a weird kind of moment of chaos in the box, perhaps combined with some defensive error and just bodies going the wrong way, quite frankly, and maybe a layer of flukiness to it. You're talking about just getting a body part on it in this part, and then at this point, and it just sort of trickles its way in the back of the net
or something, right? Yeah, I think this is always the thought in hindsight. It's never the thought in the moment, but it's always the thought in hindsight, which is if the midfield had been controlling the game better, this never would have happened. And so, yes, you look at the defensive errors. The Chicago's prone to that, but I think I think if you are prone to coughing up a goal or two every couple of games, that is a reasonable with the personnel that you have. You just kind of have to adjust to that reality, which means that if you're running 2 6s, why was Angel City in possession in that part of the field in the first place? And I think that I'm always a little bit reluctant to purely place it on the defense, because I'm like, if Chicago had been playing better as a unit, this would not have had the opportunity to occur. However, who was marking her? It's like those little things. It's like, yes, blah, 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 blah. If the system works, if they're possessing an attack, they did not pass very well in this game. I think that's what I said on Twitter. I was like, listen, they are just not playing the game that they want to play.
Yep.
They are not finding each other. Chris Petroselli said this after the match as well. He said, he was like, if the dribble was good, then the pass was off. If the pass was good, then the touch was off.
Yeah.
If the touch was good, then the shot was off. It just never came together the way they wanted it to. Yeah, look at how thin those lines are. That's not really the way they like to play. They were sub 80% passing accuracy. And I don't know how much it was like Angel City really giving it to them, though we know that Angel City is a very good full team defending squad, but they just looked a little bit flat. And they looked nervous in front of goal. And so I'm always, and this goes back to last season, I always am less, and I think they are too. This is something that they've repeated since last season, which is defensive mistakes are defensive mistakes, and you work on them and you try to clean them up. But those kinds of things are easier to adjust than the opposite, which is why didn't Chicago's spell of possessions turn into dangerous chances? There was a moment in the second half as well where I think, God bless the broadcast, they're like, Chicago's working their way back in it. Oh, good. They're getting it out to Rachel Hill, and that's how they're going to look dangerous. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, do they? They're moving the ball. They are absolutely moving the ball. But
I think because of the curious pass map, right? We just looked at the network that maybe like when you make those substitutions, right, and all of a sudden you're getting maybe a different look. That's what it perhaps feels like according to the eye test, But I'm with you on that. You're just, maybe it's two people who just A, watch this team all year, and B, have covered this team for multiple years. We see a moment like that and we're just like, is that what's truly happening here, or are we just is it just like watching a team kind of throw what they can throw right now at the opposition? Because there was a little bit of that too for me. So in terms of, this second half playing out the way that it did, and sort of having kind of giving me those vibes of a game that they couldn't take advantage of, like similar to San Diego, there was the moment of, where is the pointer? Where is the yeller, the finger pointer, the grab the game by the scruff of the neck type of player to just sort of, push things forward. And I think this is the first game this season for the Red Stars where I kind of have had that thought, and I made a mental note of that as well. And I said, I'm having this thought right now because I don't know if there is that person on this team in this match right now. I think maybe there were moments where somebody like a Vanessa DiBernardo was trying to be that person for this team. Absolutely. And I really liked, how she exited this game. Quite frankly, I think it was another one of those games where you're just saying like, wow, like Vanessa DiBernardo just keeps doing what she's doing as best she can for this team this year. But I think when you're down the goal, you're looking for that to be, kind of an attacking player. And they don't have that right now without somebody like a Mallory Pugh that's missing. And when you're sort of giving those opportunities to your first year players, this is still like a very exciting thing. And that's still a very exciting angle that, we've been covering this year. But as you get down to the final third of the season specifically, it gets a little less about, hey, like, aren't these young kids can play and aren't they doing great? And more about like, okay, well, part of the job as a pro soccer player is to win the game and maybe go on and clinch, playoff spots and getting good positions. And that's where they lag. I think the inexperience kind of, comes into play, and you're starting to see that a little bit in this team. I think we saw it specifically in this game where it was just looking for the extra pass versus, saying, hey, I'm going to actually pull the trigger on this shot.
Well, it was a lot of deferring to other people. I think that the coaching staff, and this is maybe not even something that you can adjust right now, but something to look at in the off season, is figuring out how to empower Ava Cook a little bit more. When she's on the pitch with Pugh, she very much defers to Pugh's movement. So she'll drop in, or she will try to post up in different areas of the pitch where Pugh is not. She'll run with Pugh. Now in this game, Pugh's not there, and you still see Cook doing some of that deference movement where she is more concerned with what her teammates are doing than her own kind of position as that point up striker. And I think that there's that switch that needs to be flipped. And I also think, and it's a complicated thing, right? Because you want Bianca St. George to get in with the Canadian national team and be a contributing member for Canada. That is what she wants to do. I think that's awesome. I do think that going to CONCACAF W and not playing at all in any games really messed up her flow this season. And that is frustrating to me as well, because you can see the wheels turning for her, which is just she's getting back with the team. She's getting back to playing full 90s again. She subbed out of this one as well. And it's not her fault. It's just something that she has to deal with. But I would say that is another frustration to me, because I feel like that's a player that was not hurt, did not get hurt, and yet still had this big disruption to what was a strong start to the season. And I think that we saw some of the elements of that in this game as well.
Yeah.
So it just wasn't quite working. And I don't think it has to be that way, but I think this is a harder job than like, we're going to work on finishing and training tomorrow,
Yeah, I think as the minutes sort of started to wind down in this second half, not necessarily a team, Red Stars weren't looking necessarily like a team that I would have placed money on at the moment, especially live betting, which that's called a seg.
Yeah.
PointsBet Sportsbook is counting down the days until football season with a new offer every day until the season kicks off. And so from now until September 8th, PointsBet Power Hour will unlock a new daily offer from 12 to 1 p.m. Central Time. You can sign up for PointsBet now using code CHGO to also get risk-free bets up to $2,000. So download the PointsBet app today and use code CHGO to take advantage of this limited time offer. I think to add to this sort of second half for the Red Stars here, something else that maybe is going to loom for them is we saw in this game Aaron Wright leave the match with a lower body injury.
After they had done something really smart, which was that they moved her to wing back. I thought that was a great idea. And then
like they made their subs. The Red Stars, if nothing else happened in this game,
they sure did.
They made those substitutions. That was a thing that they made sure they did. So we saw multiple subs in this one. I believe 4 of the 5 or 5 or all 5 were used at one point. Jill Aguilera coming in for Aaron Wright. She was unable to finish his game, and we got to see the type of player that Wright is. Go Red Stars team A in general, B specifically this year, because we chatting with her a little bit during that pre-match availability, talking a lot about her versatility and her experience on this team as someone who has played multiple positions and is just going to continue to do whatever is asked of her for the team, even when that's within game. So starting off the game as a defensive back and pushed higher to try, to make some things happen for Chicago. And it's not something that you necessarily want to see. As soon as, I saw that, I was like, well, that's not good. I was like, that's not good for this team, because it sort of looked like the whole idea and answer to Chicago's defensive back problems were going to be that, hey, it's like, we're just going to put Aaron right there and start solidifying minutes here. And this is how it's going to be going forward. And unfortunately, this team is just a little bit cursed at that position at the moment. And they are now finding themselves thin at that position once more. So we see this availability report that sort of comes out week to week, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it has a lot of familiar names on there at this point. We've seen all the moms who are like handling their business on maternity leave. And every once in a while it'll have like a new addition, or it's kind of like rotating, right?
Yeah.
So Kierna David has been
it's just not getting shorter, is it? It's staying the same.
Someone comes on or someone comes off and someone goes back on, and vice versa. It's like nothing really cancels itself out.
Yep.
Which maybe it's like that's what we'll talk about a little bit before we actually transition to this preview ahead of North Carolina. But Chicago, as they exist right now in the 2022 season, they are in the upper half of the table, right? They're clinching to that 6th playoff spot. They've got 15 games behind them in a 22 game season.
Yep.
So they are going to start entering what is, exiting this second half of the season and really kind of heading into what's the final third of their season. And you just sort of have to wonder, it's like they're not the only team that is finding themselves shifting a little bit in the upper half of the table. But I believe my sort of perspective on it at the time was like, they may not be the only team that's shifting in the table right now, but they're definitely the only team that is shifting in the table while continuing to get thin across their roster and not show a ton of signs from their front office about making any movement to address those very thin areas on their team. And I think if you're a fan of this team, that in itself should be a cause for a concern. You're maybe not ringing alarms in terms of the players and their performances, because if there's one thing that we've seen about this Red Stars team this year is that they're going out there and they are competing. Yeah. They're competing in these games. They're looking like a competitive side. There's no, they don't look like a team that's like dejected or there's poor body language or anything like that. They're going out there and they're competing, which I think you have to look at the other side of things, which is like, okay, so is the front office going to be doing anything to try to supplement or salvage this season? Because I think at this point, you're looking at the last 4 games, of which they have 3 losses, and you're looking at this remainder of the season ahead of you. What are you going to do about it?
I mean, I think ultimately when Kayla Sharples went down and we asked, does this mean we're looking in the transfer market? And they essentially said no. I think that's a difficult attitude to take, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, I think
poor attitude. If you're a professional sports franchise, that's a poor attitude to have.
Right. It just doesn't seem overly ambitious. It seems like, an idea that this, year is about development. And despite the fact that they, this is the kind of thing where an ambitious team would acknowledge that there are things that are working and things that are working sooner rather than later. And therefore, let's lean into that. Let's go get that final piece. Let's do something, and instead it's just like, no, we're going to wait until all the players come back next year. We're going to, or, whatever it is. And so now we are in this position of like, they really needed Aaron Wright to come back to shore up the 3 back. She might not be available. Hopefully it was just a knock. We'll see. We're also just seeing fatigue from the 3 back themselves. Like you see those little mental mistakes and you're like, Zoe Morse was not supposed to be the anchor of this defense.
Here she is.
It's not fair to her, right?
It's really not.
Game after game after game, you look at the issues, you look at, the limitations of playing Yuki as much as they're playing her. They're running Yuki Nagasato into the ground.
Oh, yeah.
And so you're just not seeing the rotation. We're waiting to get Morgan Gautrat back. They haven't been very forthcoming about why that is taking so long or what's going on behind the scenes there. And then in the attack, it's just, we're waiting for it all to click. And so I think at this point, and we've been, bullish on this young group that they drafted in, good talent, solid talent. They are doing a good job with what they have.
Yeah.
I think if you're looking at from the closing of this window last year to now, it's been a very disappointed with the injuries, the long-term injuries that they've been aware of for a long time. I know you don't want to blow up the group because you do know that they're coming back, and you obviously also want to be loyal to the players that are doing their very best to come back to the team, right? You're not trying to shake things up too much in their absence, but I don't know. It just feels a little bit like the group that is out there playing right now is being hung out to dry. And that's going to be hard to watch, I think, for the last 7 games of the season.
I am in agreement with you.
Yeah.
I'll put a word to it. I think it's been abysmal. I think when you're highlighting that timeline specifically, you're talking about from the offseason into now, and looking at the, concept of player acquisition or moves for this team, it's been abysmal.
Yeah.
It hasn't been good. It's been, quite frankly, non-existent. And there are other factors that I'm sure that fans of the team, have questions and concerns about. I think they'll want to ask why. Like, why is there a lack of movement? What is it about the franchise right now that is unable to A, attract talent, or B, sign that talent?
And there have been players looking for more playing time or looking for different club situations clearly throughout this whole season. And the question is, was Chicago even on their list? And if not, why?
Yeah, these are all questions that the franchise has to ask of themselves, quite frankly, right? And I'm sure that the fans are probably asking of the front office on themselves. But it's just and to those notes that we've mentioned right now, it's disappointing. It's disappointing and quite frankly, it's a little bit unfair and disrespectful for the roster as it's currently assembled. You have so many young players. And the whole concept of, yes, they're getting minutes, and there's nothing like, experience as the ultimate teacher, right? So they're going out there. Not only are they getting minutes, some of these rookies are getting starts week in, week out, right? But we've often heard from these players in regards to Red Stars culture that one of the other things that has been an integral part of playing as a Red Star is the fact that you've got so many other players to learn from within this system. That I remember you and I like having conversations with even Kayla Sharples and like Maria Sanchez like in their rookie year, talking about like can't believe getting drafted, and we're going to be we're going up against Sam Kerr, we're going up against Julie Ertz, that alone in itself is going to be invaluable experience, no matter what the minutes on the other side look like, so you fast forward 3 years from that or so, and you're just kind of like, well, where are we at now? So it's just about getting these young players minutes, and like there's players on this team that can say that they themselves learned how to be professionals in this league by having other experienced players around them to sort of mirror or learn from, right? So that's what I mean when I say, where I think, quite frankly, as the roster seems to be getting thinner due to injury, it's almost a little bit disrespectful to those players right now in the locker room, and that the team isn't perhaps making an addition or making a move to try to kind of boost up things on even one specific line, because I think you can look across each line for this team, and it's
gotten worse. It was like they needed one thing, and then now they need multiple.
It's like,
things.
Do you need another dagger? It's like, do you need another midfielder?
Right.
Do you need another defensive back? And now it's one of those things where it's like, which of the lines are you going to weigh more than the other?
All right, so now I'm gonna make something up here. You ready?
I love it.
I'm making up a sponsored segment. Are you ready for? We're doing a sponsored segment. This is the only Red Star that you need, sponsored by Owen.
Yes.
Only what you need. Owen is a 100% plant-based protein shake that gives you nutrition that works as hard as you do. All of their products are free of artificial ingredients, allergen-friendly, no gluten or dairy, easily digestible. Owen and CHGO have partnered up to give you an awesome offer. You can get 20% off your first purchase at liveowen.com. That's LIVEOWYN.com with the code CHGO20. So they are sponsoring, they don't even know this, but they are specifically sponsoring this segment, which is me asking you, Sandra, what is the only new Red Star that Chicago needs?
Oh, man.
The Owen Red Star. They don't know they're a Red Star yet. but the Owen that they need.
Bravo.
Thank
Bravo,
you.
Claire.
I'm
awesome.
Every week I'm trying to get sharper with it.
Yeah.
So who's the only Red Star that we need, Sandra?
Like on this team currently, or like someone that I want?
No, someone out there in the world who needs to become a Red Star.
My God. Well, let's just let's just be as ambitious as we can be with it, right? Like let's just do it.
Like pick a position. Where would you pick someone up?
I think at this point, when you're looking at line to line, I think probably defensive back. I think it also comes into what's weighing on me is if this is it too late to shift the system, right? Mm-hmm. Have you gone this long to where you've preached the system,
right?
You've said this is the process, we're sticking with it, that's part of what's been working for us, we can't change it now. So if that's the case, I think you got to try to look for somebody that could try to boost up that defensive line. I think at one point in the season, I thought it was going to be a midfielder that they needed to bring in. Now I'm like, do they need to go look for another attacker? I'm curious about that as well. I think you also have to look at the leagues that are like not in season right now versus the leagues that are in season. Like there's parts of me that's like, what if the Red Stars got another Liga MX Femenil player into the mix? And what if it was an attacker? And what if it was somebody like, I don't know, like a Scarlett Gamberos who's like doing cool things in the Women's Cup right now? That would be fun and cool, but I don't know. Like, I don't know if that's a thing that can happen right now. But is that a thing is that like the only Red Star that I want? No, I really do think they need to try to get a defensive back. I would have loved to have seen the Red Stars, in the mix for somebody like a Haley Hansen from the Dash. Apparently, Caprice Didasco was a player that Gotham was taking calls for. Orlando Pride are on an undefeated streak right now. Maybe they're not curious. They look like they're buyers. They look like they're a team that want to add on to their team. So I don't know if they would have been interested in ahead of this undefeated streak to have somebody like a Megan Montefusco, being, taking a look at that, someone with local ties to the area, So I think at this point, that's also maybe one of the problematic things. At this point, it sort of feels like, well, they could get a player, even if it's just one player that they get during this time. Which line is it going to impact? I guess that's my question for you. Which line do you want to see them make a move for?
I think it's I going back to the thing that I said before, which is that it used to be that they needed like one thing, and now it feels like they need three. I would still love. They need one more possession-based midfielder. They just do. And again, would be great to get Morgan Catra back. But again, it's like, that's on the club too. I'm sure Catra is doing everything she possibly can to make her return, but you don't know what's going on behind the scenes there, and then because I genuinely believe that with the young back line, that one-on-one defending, if you do truly control the midfield, then they don't have to be put under pressure as much. And I don't want to take that away from them, because a lot of those mistakes that they make are not, I'm trying to think of the right way to put this. It's if you're forced into 1v1 battles over and over and over again, eventually you're going to miss one. And that's how I feel like they've been playing in the defense. And so I just would love to see but it would still just be good to have that central defensive line. I believe, I'll say this. I also know, I fully understand the issues in the attack, obviously, right? Yeah. But I really believe in Ava Cook. I really believe in Sarah Griffith.
This is a Cook dive right here.
I do actually think that they have the talent to put this together in the attack. It's more just, how are the coaching principles being implemented? How are the players being coached one-on-one versus in the system? I just think that I am less concerned about the attack for the future, maybe, but I do think that those players, it's too soon, I think, to be too worried about that, especially because of the way that they play. They play with numbers forward. If you did get another really attacking focal point, you might have to shift into more of like a 4 or a 3-5-2, something like that. Just change that system a little bit, which I don't know if that's what they want to do. I don't know. So I'm hedging, but I still just think that, like, you look at a team, you look at how well Portland's doing with their midfield. I think their midfield's fantastic. They've got a number of young midfielders who are doing a really, really nice job. You look at the Reign, same thing.
Yeah.
Really, really good midfield. I just think that there's that element that just they need some help. And I think that as well as Vanessa DiBernardo has been playing, it's still in these games where they struggle, feels like she's being asked to do something out of deficiency rather than to make the team better. And you can't start from that at this point in the season. It can't be, we need these players here because we're starting at a loss. It's like, we need these, you want them to be in the position to actually help the team as much as possible. So I think I'm sticking with midfield. I think I'm still just sticking with midfield.
Yeah. I think let's talk like bargain barn, like maybe best bang for your buck, like put it on a midfielder. Like if that's the case, you know, if it's if you're at a point now in the season for this club where it's actually a little bit overwhelming and you're like, actually, we need multiple things now.
Right.
Maybe you do just, you know, you put all your eggs in one basket, right? And go for something like a middle third position. But we talked a little bit about the attack right now is something maybe that's a more recent area. And I think that's something that we maybe are going to keep an eye on as we start previewing this next match, because the Red Stars are going to continue their road trip. Their second game on the road is going to be in Cary, North Carolina. They're going to go face the Courage. And I think we got to talk about this game in a way in which the last time these two teams met, it really was a game that kind of kicked off, right, the second half of the season. And we saw a level of play from this Courage team that absolutely was like, hey, we're at the bottom of the table. We got to get every single point we can. It was a immediate sense of urgency. They put up 2 goals on the Red Stars pretty quickly. And then we got to see an equally wild second half from the Red Stars team where they scrapped out a point. You know, in this game, and it was a 2-2 draw for the two of them. But I think these two teams are meeting once more in this second half of the season, and they're kind of, I don't want to say similar positions, but maybe like upper half team, lower half team, but the energies around them are still kind of what they were. You have North Carolina that have been putting up ridiculous score lines.
Mm-hmm.
In this league, and then you have the Red Stars who have gone from like a 1, 2, 3 seed to like they're clinging 6th place. So are we going to see a frantic game, you know, against Carolina?
I just think Dabinia and Caroline playing together is
too much.
It's so good. It's just and when Dana Ordonez is turning it on, like I think so highly of North Carolina's attack. Actually, I think it's one of the best in the league. They just obviously let themselves down with their defense. And so I don't know if that's a good matchup for Chicago, right? Because what we see from Chicago is under pressure. And we saw that North Carolina game at SeatGeek that they kind of snatched a point out of. You know, Chicago is going to have to be ready for a really high press. They're going to try to force turnovers. They're not going to let the team possess very well. And I don't know then if Chicago is going to be able to put the pedal to the metal and force mistakes on North Carolina's end, because the way Kansas City dealt with North Carolina and the way that Portland dealt with North Carolina is
score more goals.
Play the exact same game against them, you know, and that's really not what Chicago is trying to do. And so this is going to be an interesting one, because I know that the Red Stars like to stick to their principles even when they're playing a high transition game.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure they're going to be I'm not sure North Carolina is going to let them. And so it's either you start running at them or you're getting run over. And so I'm fascinated to see what happens. I'm also interested to see if, like, I hope that they're able to stay very steady mentally. I wonder after this Angel City game, especially just like it's the first time those teams had played each other. I don't think the Red Stars think Angel City is better than them. Does doubt start to creep in a little bit in the locker room after a game like that one? I don't know.
I think we've yet to see it.
Yeah.
But I think it's something, I don't think that's unfair to bring up, even if it is a hypothetical. I mean, at the end of the day, you're looking at a Red Stars team that has a pretty young locker room, no matter the veteran pieces that they have around it. And, when you are that young of a locker room, I don't think that's something unfair to bring up. That's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on.
And then, you just get tired too. I just think that the more tired you get, the harder it is.
Yeah, running a table and in the long season, it's tough. It's a grind. We hear players talk about that all the time. Quite frankly, but I'm with you though. I think this is going to be a tough match for the Red Stars. It's not one that I look at and say these are two teams who match up well against each other. I don't have that feeling going into this one. Doing this ahead of the availability report dropping, but just what we heard Petroselli, share in the pre-match availability. It doesn't sound like there's going to be there's some unknowns still, quite frankly, with Malpew. Sounds like an ankle issue for Aaron Wright. Apparently Sarah Lubert has also got a bit of a knock as well. And appreciate the transparency in that because it helps us do our jobs here, right?
Yeah.
But with all those unknowns, you're just kind of like, I already was like, I don't know if this is two teams that match well against each other. If anything, after hearing that, it's just kind of like, well, actually, maybe there's some disadvantages here.
Yeah.
So I do wonder if this is a game where we're going to see Alyssa Nair have one of those types of games. I don't think that we've had that game necessarily yet from Alyssa Nair, the one that just sort of comes to her and she is just like strong in goal. And she's had them before against North Carolina. But again, that's a lot to put on one player, and especially some of the goals that have come against the Red Stars on some of those types of defensive errors. Again, I think that's a lot to put on your goalkeeper, no matter how good they are. But I'm with you. The Latin trio of the Biña, Caroline, Ordonez, like that is very exciting. I think like no matter their position in the table right now, I think if you find yourself a fan of that Carolina team, you're excited about that trio of players to watch, like week in, week out. So yeah, and they put up multi-goal games. So even though they've resulted in losses or draws, it's almost like they're averaging like 3 goals a game at this point, right? So it's just like that's a lot of goals to try to outscore, especially if you're going to be heading on the road with not a lot of answers. So if it's felt like a little bit of a rough patch, I think for the Chicago Red Stars team, it's probably because it is. And I think, it's there's a lot of unknowns here that could possibly be, I think if they walk away with a draw in this one, I think if you get a point on the road in this one against a team like this, I think you're maybe happy, with that. But I don't know if they've got enough here in this one. So if you are somebody who finds yourself, with betting interest, perhaps maybe you're looking at some of those different ways and different matchups to go ahead and put some cash on the game, and just want to remind you that you could do that with PointsBet. You can use code CHGO to also get risk-free bets up to $2,000. But that's not it. Something else that they should probably pack with them, Claire, on the road.
I was like, she's turned. She's making a left. She's making a left. She's coming back around. She's getting the home stretch, and we're back. Athletic Greens. Amazing. I love that. I just loved following you on that journey to get around back to this ad seg. Athletic Greens. What is it? What is Athletic Greens? It is 75 high quality vitamins, mineral, whole food source superfoods, probiotic, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All of those things. Yeah, if you're going on a road trip, maybe you need some Athletic Greens. If you're just trying to get your nutrients without having to worry about picking up a bunch of groceries, Athletic Greens. If you're just trying to live, laugh, love it up in the last couple weeks of summer and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know where I'm going to get all of my nutrients from, Athletic Greens. It's lifestyle friendly. It supports better sleep quality and recovery. It costs you less than $3 a day, investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. Athletic Greens.
I love it. You like it. I love it.
Yep.
That's all we got for y'all today.
I think so.
I hope that listen, I hope that we get to come back here and we talk about a Red Stars dub. I love doing that. That's one of my favorite things to do. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, my question for the chat, and come back and join us in a week and we can all kind of figure out how we feel about it, is I definitely, after the last 4 games, which that Gotham game, more about Gotham than Chicago. I was like, oh, well, we started this season without very many expectations for this group, right?
Yep.
And then through their own good play, we're like, oh, maybe we're actually wrong to discount. Let's set some expectations. Let's get excited. It's only fair to them and what they've been doing so far that we get excited about this team. And now I'm again just sort of swinging back to like, did we go too far? Did we cart before the horse here?
Yeah.
But, because it seems like when we talk about stuff like the transfer market, that's like some of the same old Chicago stuff that I think has felt bad in recent years.
Yeah.
And so you're like, well, we have this new fun group. We have this new coaching staff, new outlook, new team, but same old team. Right. And so when you do get to the end of a season like this one, you're excited because they're building for something next year, but how do we feel closer to a championship? I'm not really sure that we do at this moment. And so we just kind of have to figure out. And this is where I'm like, everybody listening, you tell me what you're thinking, ruminate on it, reflect.
Yeah.
Come back in a week. Tell me what you think.
And we'll revisit.
Yeah.
We'll revisit next week when we're recapping North Carolina and see what happens there. Listen, we not that we want to be a show that gives you homework, but we love to engage with you all in the best way possible. We've always been big on the concept of community here within NWSL and Chicago Red Stars specifically. And we just want to let you know that we've enjoyed doing this entire season. And even if it gets to the skids, we got to talk about the skids, and we're going to keep doing that. And hopefully next week, maybe they'll surprise everyone and break through with the win. But if you've enjoyed everything that we've been chatting about and how we cover the Chicago Red Stars here at CHGO, just want to let you know before we leave that one of the best ways to support us in our work is with a CHGO membership. So just know that you can get access to all kinds of podcasts and live shows on every Chicago team every single day. Some of them even doing post-game shows. You get access to premium written content from my girl Claire Watkins. And if you have the membership, you can access that at allchgo.com. You get access to t-shirts when you become a member and access to the members only Discord, the CHGO Lounge. So please sign on up for a CHGO membership. And Claire and I will be back next week with more for you all. Peace.